In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to make some restaurant quality meatballs that are soft and tender and are a hit every time. Now the plan is to make a series of easy cooking videos that just about anybody can follow. There's not much to cooking, it's very easy to do with a few skills that can easily be picked up and learned. Another thing that I want to include in this videos is the actual time it takes to prepare these dishes. I'm tired of all those cooking videos that say that they can get something done under 30 minutes, and when you go and try to cook it, it takes you an hour and a half to 2 hours. So what I'm going to do is put up a timer and show an approximation of how long it actually takes to make the dishes. From the minute you walk into the kitchen, get everything in order, and start cooking to the moment you serve the first dish. Now I don't plan to include the amount of time it takes to clean up because depending on your setup, if you have a dishwasher or if you hand wash, it varies. But you can help that along by cleaning as you cook. So the first thing we're going to do is get our pan nice and warm, low medium heat. Since we're going to be doing some spaghetti, we're going to go ahead and save some time by getting the water going. First we add a couple of teaspoons of salt to the water. I use kosher salt because it's easier to handle by hand as opposed to table salt. We're going to get our water to boil, and once it boils, we'll lower the heat to a rolling boil, which basically means that the water simply gently bubbles at the top. One of the first things in our setup is to choose the correct cutting board. Now if you have this type of cutting board at home, that's fine. This is good for sandwiches or for your bar if you want to like cut garnishes or lemons and things like that. But for cooking home meals, this actually gets more in the way. It's versatile, but I recommend getting something bigger. It makes things a lot more comfortable and more efficient. You want to get something, if you use a dishwasher, you want to get something that fits comfortably in your dishwasher. I personally hand wash my cutting board, so I got the biggest one I could get that will fit in my sink, and that is about 14 and a half by 19 and a half. It's a half-inch thick plastic cutting board. I think those are the best because they're easier to use and maintain. A wood cutting board is also good to use, but requires more maintenance. If you just started now and you want something simple, I highly recommend using this plastic cutting boards. The first thing I did is I laid out this rubber mat that you can buy at TJ Maxx to help the board from sliding. You could use a damp paper towel or even napkins, but I use this because I can wash it and use it. In the restaurant industry, we usually put our board right at the edge of our workstations to be able to slide food off. What I do is I put it about an inch or inch and a half away from the edge, allows me to slide food right onto our cooking surfaces. Now this size cutting board allows me to prepare my ingredients and keep them on the board, thus eliminating the need for containers or bowls to put my prep ingredients on. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to start our clock at 5 minutes because that's about how long it usually takes me to get all my ingredients ready the minute I walk into the kitchen. The first thing we're going to do is trim the edges of this onion. Clean our board, always try to clean as we go. Now I have a garbage can right next to me where I just throw everything without having to think about it. So I highly recommend, if you can't have a garbage can, then use a bowl where you can throw your stuff into. This actually saves time. We're going to go ahead and take the first layer off. It's just a lot easier than trying to pick through the skin. We cut our onion in half. Then we're going to go ahead and slice it thinly. Now I've seen a lot of videos on how to cut an onion, chop it or whatever. But one of the things I hate the most is when they don't show you what they do at the end. They usually just leave the piece out and put it to the side and be like, yeah, this is how you chop an onion, or this is how you dice an onion. Here I'm going to show you what I actually do at the end of the onion. So we go ahead, we start trimming it and making them nice and thin. Then when we get to the edge, we're going to face it down so it could be more stable, cut, face it down again to keep the stability, and cut it again. Then we go around, and if there's a lot of root, we just cut around the root, get rid of the root, toss it out. That's it. Next we grab the bell pepper, we stand it up, and we cut around it nice and smooth, let the knife do the work. We want to keep the seeds intact and leave that white part, try to leave as much of the white part with the seeds. If you get any of the white part, all you gotta do is just take it off. Now what makes a great dish and an okay dish is not taking this white part off, because once you cook it, it makes your dish kind of bitter. So we take that off, we slice it right off carefully. Then we're going to cut them thinly into what they call julienne. And after we julienne the pepper, we go ahead and turn it sideways. We make like a fine dice, about the same size as our onions so that they can cook evenly. We're going to go ahead and add about a tablespoon of oil once our pan is nice and warm. And we're going to smear it all around to get our pan nicely coated. And we're going to go ahead and take our vegetables and slide it right off the board into the pan. We're going to go ahead and cook this for about 5 minutes. We're going to toss them a little bit. We're going to toss them, get them nice and coated with the oil. If you can't do that, if you're not comfortable doing that, you just go ahead and use a spatula and just mix it all around. It's no big deal. Just take your time. Don't try to rush this. We add some salt for flavor, a little bit of salt for flavor, about a quarter teaspoon. Just a couple of pinches, and some fresh ground pepper. Now if you can get your hands on freshly ground pepper or a pepper grinder, that's a lot better than using already grounded pepper. So we got to go ahead and shake it a bit, mix the salt and pepper around. We're gonna let this cook for about 5 minutes, and in the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and prepare our other ingredients. Here we have some parsley. We're gonna get about a half a cup of parsley and just fine chop it, not too small, something comfortable. And this is going to be what we're gonna use for our meatballs. We get a pound of beef in, and just break it apart. We break it apart, and we season it with about a quarter teaspoon of salt, and of course we always want to season as we go every step of the way. Our fresh ground pepper, again, a few churns of the mill or the pepper grinder, and just to give us some more flavor. Then you could use fresh Parmesan cheese, or like I did, just use the fake stuff, which also works pretty well. Just a few dabs. Then we're going to go ahead and get some breadcrumbs. I'm going to use about a quarter cup. I only had this seasoned panko breadcrumbs, but you could use a slice of bread. Just make sure you cut it finely or put it in a food processor and just blitz. The breadcrumbs along with the vegetables is what gives the meatballs that soft, tender texture. Then we add about a quarter cup of milk. In this case, I went too far and I think I added about half a cup of milk. It was a little too much. But if we get the right ratio, so the right consistency, you won't have to use any eggs. Since I use half a cup of milk instead of a quarter cup of milk, I'm actually straining the breadcrumbs, and we just mix it in. Mix all our ingredients. Now I'm going to go ahead and dice a couple of cloves of garlic to add to our bell peppers and onions. Another easy way to peel the garlic is to just smash it slightly, loosen up the skin, it comes right off. Now you can also use a garlic press, and that works fine. But dicing them with a knife is just as easy for me. Just finely cut the cloves, minding your fingers by keeping them tucked in. Then we cross chop them to create the small dice. This is a lot easier than it looks, and with practice you'll get there. To add a subtle spice to the meatballs, I went ahead and added about a teaspoon of pepper flakes and added about a teaspoon of olive oil. We go ahead and add our garlic, mix, and we let it cook for about a minute. We're just ready to go into our mix. We go ahead and dump it all, even with a little bit of oil. We kind of loosely mix it. We don't want to pack it too tight. We don't want our meatballs to be too dense, even though we use breadcrumbs. So try to pack them loosely. Here I'm adding about half a cup of flour to coat our meatballs to give it a nice browning color. You go ahead and shake it. Now you don't have to use this, but I do often use this 2-ounce ice cream scoop to help make the meatballs, which saves time and makes our meatballs more even. You can also do it by hand. You don't have to do this. As we make them, we're going to go ahead and pack them, but loosely, not too tight, and we just lay them into our flour. We put them in our flour, and once we have them all, we're going to go ahead and just toss them and coat them and fry them. I went ahead and added some vegetable oil. You could use olive oil, but you have your choice. You can use olive oil if you prefer. We're going to go ahead and spread the oil around the pan to ensure even coating. We're going to dust off the excess flour of our meatball and use the pan's handle as a guide for our first meatball. We're going to lay them all clockwise so that they can evenly cook. When it comes time to turn them, we can also turn them in order. This allows for even browning. Now I'm not trying to cook the meatballs, I'm just trying to get them nice and brown and let them cook for another 3 minutes. And when it comes time to take them off, I go ahead and start with the first one that I did, which is right by the handle, and take them all out in order again. This ensures that the meatballs all got about the same amount of time for browning. Now take the excess oil and dump it into a heat-resistant container. Please be careful when doing this. I prefer you use a metal container. Don't ever use plastic. Use a metal container or a coffee mug. Then we're going to go ahead and return the pan. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add sauce from a jar. You can make your own sauce. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and deglaze our pan. Take all those nice burnt bits off the bottom, which gives it a lot of great flavor. See, we mix it all around. And then we go ahead and we're going to return our meatballs back into the pan. Any leftover juices, we're going to go ahead and add them. And we're going to cover and simmer this for about 15 minutes. Make sure we lower the heat to simmer. When we have about 10 minutes left in the meatballs, we go ahead and add our pasta so we can be done almost at the same time as our meatballs are done. Do check the box instructions, and it will tell you what is the amount of time to cook your pasta. Make sure that all the pasta is all covered in water. Now we're going to go ahead and separate the pasta like this for the first 3 minutes, doing it every once in a while, about every minute, to prevent it from sticking. And then when they're almost done, we go ahead and check it one more time and see if they look all nice and loose. Go ahead and drain the pasta. Take the pot off the hot burner, drain the pasta with the colander, shake off any excess water, and return it to the pot for seasoning. Now we can go ahead and add some oil to keep it from sticking, about a tablespoon of oil. Here I added some dry Italian spices, or you can also add some oregano, add ground pepper, a few churns, and just a little bit of salt, because we're going to go ahead and add more of that green fake cheese stuff for flavor. Now, just a few sprinkles here and there. Now what I do is I toss the pan, I mix the pan up. I don't want to go in there with the tongues just yet because then all the cheese is going to attach to the tongues. So I'll wait for it to melt a little bit and then go in with the tongues and finish mixing it for about a minute. We go back to our meatballs. Now see here I try to be all fancy and try to stand them up, but they tipped over to the side, but that's okay. Well, this recipe took about 1 hour 10 minutes from start to finish. If you're going to give this recipe a try, let me know in the comments below how long it took you. And remember, the more you repeat this recipe, the more efficient you'll become at it. Now we're going to go ahead and add our meatballs. The meatballs are about 2 ounces, so 3 meatballs is good enough per order, but no one's going to hate you if you put 4. Now some people like to take the pasta and just add it to the sauce and mix it all around, and that also works great. I like doing it this way because for me, it gives it a better presentation. But you do you, whichever way you want. Here I can control the amount of sauce I add. Just put a few tablespoons of sauce over it. Trust me, I might have made this look a little complicated, but the truth is that this recipe is really easy to use. Now add some Parmesan cheese. Again, you can go ahead and use fresh Parmesan. I used for this time around, I used the green bottle stuff. Then I went ahead and topped it off with some parsley. I'm gonna go ahead and cut right into this meatball. It's nice, it's soft and tender, but still holds together, and it just melts away in your mouth. This is a real easy recipe, and if you want to do it, the ingredients and directions are in the description below. Enjoy!